10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome back to A Quest Through Quinn. We are on the finale of this book. We're going to be talking about Dragons of Winternight, book 2 of this fantastic trilogy, the Dragonlance trilogy. Joining me is my featured guest. Next to me, I got Trev, and I got Goodday, Comics and Games. I probably just messed that up, but Jesse. And then I got Tony, Comiverse, and no special names this episode. What the F, guys? I was looking for Hobbiton and Barbarian. No, okay. I'll touch base with the chat as people come in. Right now, it's just us on the panel commenting, which I appreciate too. But I will touch base as we get along. But before we move along, because we did have some of these guys absent from our previous episodes. Jesse, is there anything that you'd like to throw down, or Trev, or on anything that we might have passed that you might have wanted to add on, kind of thing?
Well, my name does say Dragon Slayer, so I threw that in there.
I see.
I mean, for whatever that means. I don't know if that's foreboding anything, but
I like it.
No, I kind of just jumped back into chapter 4. I was just going to kind of go through some notes, and one quick little note is that maybe it's a little bit of a longer note, but I'll just do that one. When Fizban and Tasselhoff were talking to Lord Gunther about getting the orb and talking about what's going on and just confirming Sturm's story, there was kind of a funny conversation dialogue between them. It's always kind of funny with Fizban and Tasselhoff. One thing that I see here that kind of popped up was Gunther. He said, when kind of in the middle of it, he's like, Tass was throwing at us. He's like, you want to hear that? You want to hear the story, the most wonderful story? He's like, no. And he said, and if I believed this swimming bird tale, wait. And he sank back into his chair. Sturm did say something about a Kender. Well, it gave us a little bit of backstory of what he meant by that swimming bird tale. And it says that Gunther refers to a child's story common among humans of the period regarding a small boy who had broken a wizard's favorite jar while washing it in a large pool at the center of the wizard's home. When the wizard demanded of his apprentice what had happened to the jar, the boy at first replied that a fish had knocked it out of his hands as he carefully washed it. When the wizard pointed out that there were no fish in his pond, the boy, rather than admit the truth, told the wizard that it was a bird who had flown over the wall that had caused the accident. When the wizard asked how the bird had disturbed a jar already underwater, the apprentice replied that it had been a swimming bird. The boy's punishment was all the greater for the greater lie. From this tale then came the swimming bird phrase, which forever after to humans of all ages stands for a lie that is growing by the minute, and the punishment that grows with it. And that's just one fun.
It's interesting. I like that, because that was a line that didn't exactly line up. I thought it was related to something else, but and that was a question that I had related to that chapter specifically was, like Sturm only tells Gunther of Lorana and Guild, but because of the royal blood leniency due to his witnesses and stuff, but he never mentions Tass or Fizban kind of thing. How did that come in? And we kind of just figured that it was like side conversation that we weren't privy to. I mean, the book jumps ahead a bunch, but in the book, as you're reading it, Gunther's just like, oh yeah, Sturm did mention a Kender, and nothing about a magic user, which was another comment. And how come no mention of a magic user? And I get Fizban was supposed to be dead at this time, but what about Rage?
Well, you don't want to mention magic users because they're kind of frowned upon.
Yeah. We talked about it.
And there were some talks about gnomes and goalie dwarfs. actually mainly gnomes I'm seeing because of the whole mountain Nevermind and how they kind of got thrown into it.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, that's good too. I like that.
Not to mention, I could probably go on for 10 minutes if you wanted me to
Right.
talk about it, but we can jump in.
That's good. That's good. That's good. What's up, Paul in the 619? Thanks for stopping by. D&D, bro.
Yo.
Trev was part of this campaign for a little while. All right. So if without further ado, if there's nothing y'all want to throw down about the previous stuff, we had left off on book 3, chapter 7, An Unexpected Journey. So we're just gonna jump there now. I've trimmed down the questions a little bit. I might throw some questions out there, and don't. That doesn't mean I don't want your feedback and stuff. I do. That this is more of a trying to get to the end of this book, and we still got quite a bit to cover. But I mean, I'm not really rushing stuff, but I do want to get to the next book. You know what I'm saying? All right, so chapter 7, An Unexpected Journey. Lorana, now finishing her mission, wants to find Tanis. Believes he is in Sylvanasti, but Alistan notes that if they found an orb, they would most likely come to San Chris. Lorana's father wants her to come back home, but feels she would never go back home. Speaker asks of Gilthanas, and told he is on a secret mission. The council agrees to forge more dragonlances. While at the castle, Lorana is brought into Sturm's trial for knighthood. With some pause, Sturm is completely vindicated and received his knighthood status. Derek in trouble without trust, Gunther is at a dilemma, but plans to send Lorana and Theros to Palanthas to teach more how to wield the lance. But more so to vindicate Sturm and out Derek of his little power ploy stuff. Lorana is torn between going to Tanis or helping Stern. Fizban gives Nosh his life quest back, this being due to the orb breaking and Fizban kind of just changing it, like now you can study it from the inside out kind of thing, which I absolutely love that touch. Fizban gives Tass the choice to go with him or Lorana. He picks Lorana. Tass says his goodbyes and finds Fizban in weapon development. Fizban stating he'd see Tass again and telling Tass he'd choose the right path regardless, the dark path. Before leaving, Elistan finds and formally introduces himself to Fizban. Elistan mentioned he has known Fizban for a long time, and it goes back to the first book with the stories of the old man and stuff like that. Real quick, I'm going to say hi to Kenneth. What's up, Kenny B? Thanks for stopping by. Make sure that and that is where this chapter leaves off. I want to like chime in that book 3 is absolutely my favorite like part of this book. If I had to segregate it to like book 1, 2, and 3, like I love parts of book 1 and 2, but once we get here, it's like the whole dynamic shift of the book changes and it gets extremely serious, and all of the situations are dire, especially as we're moving to Palanthas. Palanthas, I'm sorry.
Just
Thank you. Hey, these words are weird, okay? And I'm trying to read this stuff. No, but I would like I just especially like this chapter with Lorana. I mean, Lorana being the main kind of, how the books moves into this fashion and kind of makes her the main character, because you start out and the whole book is Tanis, and then we go to this book and it's kind of Lorana, which is not a huge complaint. It's actually a huge positive. I think, it's kind of like if I were to tell you that Star Wars started out with Luke, and then Empire Strikes Back, we were going to follow Leia, and Return of the Jedi, we were going to follow Han. I don't know if people would have been so on board with that idea, but this, it works for some reason.
That's one of my favorite things about this series is it starts out and you're like, God, this is a huge group. How are they going to do all these characters justice? And it starts out, of course, with the Plains people, Gold Moon and Riverwind, and just highlights people as it goes. Which,
on another note, I will like to say it's also a hindrance because some of these characters become side characters, and you fall in love with these characters. For instance, Riverwind and Goldmoon. I love these characters. Like we spent a whole book with them. I mean, attached to these characters, and then we get to this book, and they're still present, but it's more, I'd say background characters, which I'm not complaining. They're still active. I think I mentioned this like the first episode, where there was a bunch of times I had to go through the book and find where Goldmoon and Riverwind were, because they're not really mentioned that much, kind of thing. That's how much they fall into the background.
I love how they pivot between the characters. They do a good job at that, but you're right. Sometimes characters get swept under the rug for a little bit, and it might feel like a long time. Even with, it's interesting, and my take on Flint Fireforge is he kind of seems to constantly fall as a side character to everybody, even though he's always there, it seems like, and he doesn't get swept for long, but when he comes in, it seems like it's little bit by little bit. But in this book 3, it does come about more. Or was it the end of book 2 when they were out in the like when he was dying from the, he was just seasick ultimately?
Yeah, book 2.
Yeah, that was in book 2. So I guess he did get more limelight there, but it's interesting to me that I feel like Flint is a side character to Tasselhoff. Because they're always together and they're always communicating a lot. They go together like ham and cheese. So whichever one you like better, that's usually what Tass is.
It's kind of an odd note too, because you usually balance like serious drama, thriller, horror with comedy, right? Yeah. And in this scenario, we're balancing comedy with an extra layer of comedy, because Tass is already like pretty comedic himself, and then you add Flint in there, and it's like the backup on the backup. In many situations, I could see this not working, but it works so well. And the way they move Flint around, because that's basically what he is, like the comedic, side character. I'm not saying he's a side character. He's very much a main character, but the way the book uses him and how he, he'll move with Tass for a little bit, or, then he goes with Sturm, and he's always there for some snide comment or something like that. But I will like to state he has been true on the water thing. Every time they pass over the water, it's a bad thing.
He wants to be serious, but he just always I think he gets caught up in the comedic element of Tasselhoff, to where he's just like, he's overseeing, he becomes the grumpy old man only because of Tasselhoff. Or mainly because of Tasselhoff, but ultimately he's a serious character. It's just kind of funny, that dynamic, how it does his character, his traits, actually, it just makes Tasselhoff even funnier. It makes the story even funnier.
So
he comes across as annoyed with Tasselhoff, but he's kind of Tasselhoff's babysitter.
Yeah, we know the love's there. We know, especially for each, the main 5 that were together or 6, right? But we do know that they all we do know the general love for that main group is there. So like Flint and Tass, Tanis, Reyes, Caramon, and then Kitiara, and Sturm to some hesitance, as we find out in this book, with some of the characters. But we still know the love is there, because even with that character that has these hesitance towards Sturm, he's still not treated as a traditional enemy kind of thing. I was going to go somewhere and I lost it, damn it. No, but I love the dynamic and the way it works. You think, too much comedy or too much this would be too much, and it works very well, especially when a lot of this book is very serious, so it's good to throw that in there. It honestly reminds me of the Saturday morning D&D cartoon, where it had a very, childlike seriousness to it, but it also had those comedic and childlike moments, that kind of stuff. What's up, Bethany? Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, I have 3 notes from quick notes from chapter 8 or from chapter 7, from the first chapter that we're starting tonight, and that is regarding how at the beginning the speaker kind of essentially shunned his daughter Lorana because she wouldn't tell him about the brother's quest, I think it was, and where he was going, and the way he kind of insinuated that now he only has one child. This it's kind of a spoiler, but not really, but it's thrown in here. It says, little does the speaker know that it will be Porthios, his eldest child, who becomes the next speaker of the sons, who will attempt to unify the elven nations. So I apologize in advance, but it's here in this book, so I was going to throw it out there. So
no, and it's something that they like. It's in the background. It's something so in the background. I don't even know if I've added it into. I think I did when we first came back to Portheos. But I want to say it's in there, and the High Speaker has mentioned it a couple times that is the plan. Is his oldest is supposed to become the next High Speaker, and that's form and fashion. But he has the hesitation because he's very much drawn to anger and he has these like old school biases set up.
Yeah.
But I want to say you could, I mean, formulaic, you can see that that's either going to happen soon because the book keeps, mentioning it and it kind of in the background. So I think it's like the book trying to prepare which for me, it's not a big thing. I don't think if they switched out the High Speaker at any time, like it would have been a major thing. Oh, another guy leading the elves. Okay, let's do it. So his son take a position. Now, on the other note, I can say I connect with that. Like I have personal experience with family cutting ties and stuff like that. So, I can personally, connect with Lorana and what she's going through and the actual surprise of it, that comes with that, like finding out that you've been cut off from the family and especially from the last time she left, she's still happily familyed up. And then when she comes back, she just gets this super cold shoulder and her brother gets like a celebration. And
Yeah, I watched a interview with both of them talking about how a lot of stuff they actually set up in this book. So they're not really fleshing out some of the elven stuff, but they're kind of hinting at things to come, I think.
I think that elves are a stubborn people in this in the Dragonlance stories. Definitely got, they're very hard-headed and there's, to me, it just seems like how would you disown your daughters over something like that when, but it's interesting to me.
I want to say that all the races in this D&D world are stubborn to a degree. They all have their biases. I would say we're with the more like, down to earth people because they're more accepting of other cultures. But I mean, it didn't start out that way because remember in the very first book, they were hesitant about the barbarians and,
I would say most of the races are introverted and they're really hesitant of anybody outside. But the elves in particular are straight up discriminatory.
Yeah, they are. It's I could say it's one of the bigger hangups from my depiction of elves is, elves is generally like a loving, naturistic,
Exactly.
and seeing this side, which I'm not against because you'd have to explain the dark side of elves. The tagline dark implies a lot, so I mean there has to be some, and the Lords of the Rings dark elf term is nice, but I don't think that applies to all other things because in their terminology dark just means they grew up on that side of the sun and these people didn't. No. I like the dark as far as like evil alignment or bad alignment. It just sounds right kind of thing.
Two last things, and that is these are gnomes related, and one is a quick snippet that to the gnomes there is no such thing as disaster, merely opportunity, which makes a lot of sense in their wild nature of being mechanical engineers by nature. Which that was actually something that was a larger footnote in one of the earlier chapters I glazed through. That they came across the gnomes and didn't really have a lot to add to them. So what they did is made them engineers. And they're, how they talked about the levels within the gnome, like in the mountain where if they fall, they get caught by the net. And at the very bottom, there's the sponges that would essentially clean them up.
Yeah.
If they hit the ground. It does mention here that an outsider ventured into Mount Nevermind and ended up exploring via the gnome flinger almost every level of the gnome's volcanic city. And this is in the book Gnomes. Gnomes 100, Dragons 0 by James M. Word and Gene Blashfield. So there is another side story that goes more into the gnomes of Dragonlance.
That'd be that'd actually be interesting in that because the gnomes are such a great, they're an interesting character class in themselves. The way they think, talk, like react, that kind of stuff. I enjoyed reading. So far, all the subclasses of dwarves, I've enjoyed. Like they made a big deal of the gully dwarves, and I loved the gully dwarves. I thought they were great. Tony, anything you want to throw down, buddy?
Well, I was actually going to just make a comment when Goodday was saying something about the gnome flinger. It made me think about one of the last days at work. My buddy was showing some stuff, and he showed a cat, like a diagram of a catapult. And I went, "Oh, that's a gnome flinger." He went, "What?" I went, "Read Dragonlance."
It's awesome.
It's an interesting concept, especially because we just came from a book where a place was using pulleys and all this other stuff, and then we come here and they're supposed to be like technologically advanced. They're using like these catapults and nets. I mean, it's a great idea, but it's like you're like, why didn't you just use the levers or how come elevators haven't been invented yet? You know, kind of. I don't know, but I love the no flingers.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I just love the fact that, like, I know here in Dragonlance, I don't know if it's in other Forgotten Realms books, but the gnomes are more like, hey, let's just tear it apart and check it out and see how it works. You know, I like that.
Their philosophy, Tony, if it's fixed, break it.
Yeah.
I like that. You know, it kind of goes into what the Kinder believe. You know, if it's something that's easily opened, then it's not worth their time because they could just open it, kind of thing. They actually like the challenge of going through like a locked door versus, you know, an unlocked door. I like those, you know, character traits of these classes. You know, I think it's interesting.
The last thing I want to say on these gnomes for right now is that there are at least 50 gnomish guilds, and each guild has a variable but innumerable number of committees. Rarely does the right hand let the left guild know what it is doing. Some fun stuff on the gnomes there.
Yeah, it is. And I like that we have a gnome book. I didn't know that, so that is good to know. I love that they have all these side offshoots. You know, if you're interested, you know, it's out there, kind of thing, which is great. Anybody want to add on to chapter 7 before we move on?
No.
All right, and I'm probably going to say this wrong. Chapter 8, the Parashion, Memories of Long Ago. Parashon. Back with Tanis's group in a town called Flotsam, port town on the Blood Sea of Istar, a draconian-owned town. Raceland now mostly recovered his strength. Tanis asks how they can use the orb, and Race tells them that they need to go to the library in Palanthas to learn how to use it. Tanis, torn between going to San Crist and Palanthas, decides to get a ship and sail north. But arriving to Flotsam and learning how Draco thick the part of the world is, they simply shoot for a harbor. Caramon and Tanis to steal human Draco armor so they can blend in. Ray stays with the orb. Using stealth, they find and best 2 guards and take their armor. Now undetected, they move to the harbor and find a captain named Marquesta Carthon. Marquesa instantly knows they're not in the Draco army, but agrees to take them on the Parashion. While showing Tanis the ship, he sees Barum, not exactly recognizing him at first. Barum working as a helmsman. Now ship acquired, Caramon is set back to the end with Race, and he's going for supplies. A 4-day wait until the ship departs. While going for supplies, Tanis realizes they took armor from high-ranking Draconians, also finding all the shops closed this day. While looking, he is ambushed by wild elves and drugged into an alley and almost killed, but saved by a dragon high lord, which turns out to be Kitiara. What's up, Matt?
Yeah, and Tanis he was definitely conflicted with meeting her. And he was, but at the end of it all, he didn't seem to hold back. I guess he felt like he couldn't because he was trying to hold character of his disguise and of his situation. But they really did paint the picture like he gave in pretty easy. They've painted the picture throughout the stories that he had that divide of love and interest between and infatuation with Kitiara. So it wasn't a surprise, but it was kind of a mark against him of his actions when you look at it as from a moral compass. Mm-hmm. So it did show that his human side outweighed his elf side in that situation.
I could say yes to a lot of that. I could say that I love the setup of the scene, the way it goes down. Like it caught me off guard when we were reading because it's specifically like he's going out for supplies in a town that's supposed to be draconian, like run, and all of a sudden he's ambushed by these elves who are trying to kill like high officials, and then saved by Kitiara, which I want to say in the moment it comes off like multiple ways, like he's surprised, he's taken back, the human side kicks in, the love, or specifically sex, because that's a big, the whole boots. No, but and the first thing he sees are her boots, and that's what he connects, and then you find out in the next couple of chapters, what's the boot referral to? Um, no, but other than this, I mean, the chapter's not so long. I mean, it's heavy as far as like where they move, but as far as what goes on in the chapter, I would say there's a couple like surprises for me. The fact that they just like are leaving raced with the dragon orb, even though he said like, yeah, I know how to control it and stuff, but like, for me, after going through the whole nightmare forest situation and like embrace, I mean, we've seen power from him, but enough to control a dragon orb power, I don't know about that, kind of thing. So I mean, the fact that Tanis, Caramon, that they're just like, yeah, race is good with the dragon orb, that kind of took me for a surprise, kind of thing.
What are they going to take it?
No, but like,
I mean, I think Caramon's going to let his brother take it. Tanis knows Raceland is smart, so I think he trusts Raceland to a certain degree.
it is. That's exactly what it is. We're getting. The distrust is still there, but not enough in this situation. I mean, they could have took it. It's in a movable bag. You know what I'm saying? No, but I get the whole setup of the situation, and it does set up for a bigger, reveal later on, kind of thing. Because a lot of stuff comes from the Dragon Orb race, even though it's kind of more so background stuff, because the book is more focused on the other Dragon Orbs than this one, until we get to the end, kind of thing.
To a degree, they're scared to take it from him, I think, too.
Ooh, I didn't think of that, but agreed.
You're just going to take it from him? I mean, you can see how he is.
Yeah, true.
So my mind tends to wander when that elf, proclaimed that he's going to get revenge on his family that the High Lords had, killed, and then he got killed. It just made me think. I was like, man, I'd like to hear that guy's story, and then that one elf story and how everything led up to that moment where he just got stabbed in the back, pretty much by Kitiara, and right there about to kill Tanis. Like it was kind of a meta story because you'd really have to know all of this about it. But to me, it's just like, man, what poor guy.
And I kind of figured that the High Lord that killed his family was Kitiara, and it was like full circle, like he was out to kill her and like messed up and went for Tanis, which she's not even in the army, and then gets killed by said Dragon Lord, kind of thing.
It was a Tarantino moment for sure.
Hey, clean sheet.
It made me think of the Patriot, where what is it? Can't think of the guy's name. Mel Gibson's son, he gets married, his wife gets killed, he goes after the guy that killed his wife, and then he ends up
and then that's a good reflection right there.
One note on flotsam. There is a saying that when the pot boils, the scum floats to the top. After the cataclysm, flotsam collected the scum both physically from the debris that floated to the surface of the Blood Sea from the destroyed city of Istar, and personality-wise.
Personality-wise.
Scum floats to the top there.
That sounds right. I mean, it's specifically the way the town's described, like the inclusion of it didn't, they were all for the Draconians. They were just like, well, as long as, I mean, and we know that the Draconians, they did really care about this town. They just want the harbor or whatever so they can move their ships. And it just happens to have some bars and, and they like drinking, which I love that they keep throwing that information in there. It's like the third time in this book alone that Draconians like to drink, those alcoholic bastards. No. So any thought on Marquesta Carthon? We spend an interesting time getting to know her like specifically, and then she's not really like, kind of talked about anymore. It's interesting because we are on the ship with her later on, and she kind of just disappears from the story. I like Marquesta. I'm hoping we get more of Marquesta, because we don't get a lot of. But okay, so the Barum thing. Why doesn't Tanis recognize Barum? Yeah, let's go, Jesse.
Well, I do know to quench your thirst there. There's a note that at 18, Marquesta had acquired Parashon in a tale told in Marquesta, Carthon, and it was written by Tina Danielle, or Daniel with 2 L's at the end. So again, Marquesta Carthon is the name of a side story book.
Okay.
I think this note, I was looking for there it is, her people. So I guess that's her father's people. She was talking about the Carthon, was one of the dark-skinned race living in northern Ergoth. That's her father's people. Her mother was an elf. It's unlikely, though, that Marquesta would ever have fit into elven society. So other than that, there's not much. There's nothing else on her. At least not in this book.
Hey, Carmen. I like Marquesta. I thought she was interesting and her whole swagger, and I mean, she is a captain, but she does come off as a pirate captain, which I appreciated, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was interesting how they both trusted, because they came from was it William, the bar owner at the other spot?
Yeah,
he gave them like the cue, like, hey, go find her, and it still wasn't. Tanis was so suspicious, like, no, I'm not even going to tell you where we're going. Just take us north, and if we trust you enough, then we'll go the rest of the way, type of thing.
Which in this moment kind of turns out to be a fall. I mean, it doesn't lead to much, but Marquesta does take it the wrong way when he gets hesitant about giving her directions and stuff like that, when she was kind of openly willing to help in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think she kind of like clams down a little bit after that moment.
That's a smart way to approach it in D&D.
It is, and especially as much as from the first and second book, as much as the distrust is in this world, like, it's important, and especially we're in wartime and stuff like that, in a draconian run kind of own town kind of thing. So I mean, no, none of that came off sideways. That my sideways moment, and I can put some thinking behind it, was Tanis and Barum, and I can get that Barum is what I would consider at this moment an extremely side character, even though there is focus on him for main reasons. But as far as us, the readers, he's had very little play in the book. Back to Pax Darkus, he was with, a main kind of addition to the group at that time with, what was his name? Eben?
Yeah.
So I found it a little odd that Tanis didn't like instantly go back to Eben at that moment. I mean, he does eventually. It's a couple chapters later, and he realizes, oh, Barum, yeah, that guy, I remember him. Any thoughts into that? Maybe just bad recollection.
I have more to add about the boots.
Ooh, let's go. We'll wait for us to get there. Hold on. All right, so I'll read this because it's a short little paragraph. So, Chapter 9, Tanis captured. Dazed, Tanis is led to Kitiara's personal quarters. She commands her housemate and servants to be left alone. The servants mentions messages from a High Lord, and I'm going to say this wrong, Aaron Kiss, something like that. But told to leave. Kitiara and Tanis catch up somewhat. Tanis holds some discretion. Kitiara mentions her mission is to find the Green Gem Man, which is Barum. Told he is the key to the Dark Forces winning at all costs. Told to Tanis that they could win and rule together. They share a romantic moment, and that's where this chapter catches off. And this is where the famed boots part comes up, because we find out it is kind of a game that Kitiara and Tanis have been playing since they've been fooling around, let's just say that. And basically, Kitiara gets him to take off our boots, and that just leads to them taking off the rest of their stuff. But that's like their terminology to start the whole, the game and play. So, yeah.
Lorana's nightmare came true ultimately.
Yes, it did.
So this is a cliff note about the boots from Tracy Hickman. I often have referred to this type of scene as a boot scene. A boot scene is when you are watching Captain Kirk fall into the arms of a magnificent alien goddess. The music swells, then we cut away to McCoy and Spock battling some plot point back and forth between them, and by the time we cut back, well, Kirk is putting on his boots. Now, there's nothing particularly suggestive about Kirk's boots per se, but we all know what actually happened. Even if, being an alien goddess, we aren't actually exactly sure how it happened, but we'll let that pass. The point is that I believe sex is best conveyed in a story or film through such a boot scene. The actual details of who put what hand where and whether anything pulsed or throbbed does not add anything to the story, nor give us any particular deeper understanding of the characters. Besides, sex is one of those things that loses almost everything when it is reduced to words on a page or pictures on a screen. For sex and stories, give me a good boot scene every time.
I agree. And to note that one of my favorite authors, he has a tendency to touch base with anatomy, and just in writing, you find out that the second you start touching base with certain parts of anatomy, the reader usually goes bad. And then on top of that, it just doesn't age well. I mean, during the time, it might be a termed, coined out thing, but as we progress, it might not age so well. So I appreciate a good sex boot scene. I don't think we need. I mean, I could understand if we're reading that kind of book. This isn't that, so it would come way off key if, like, all of a sudden they started touching bases with anatomy and stuff like that. Like PTR touched his,
Yeah.
Exactly.
she spit on that thing. No.
It's interesting to see where the authors stand though on it, and it just makes sense because that was really the first boot scene. There's kind of tidbits of the affection between Tika and Caraman. River
We almost got a boot scene. Yeah. And that would have been, that's not even a boot scene. That would have been a whole, like, that's more of like a Halloween, Michael Myers chase, that kind of, no, I'm like, what's up, El Ray? Thanks for stopping by. No, but I really did appreciate this scene. Sorry, Trev. I want to say it flows with the book. There's some romantic stuff coming. I want to say at some degrees it does catch me off guard because I didn't think Tanis was, I mean, even though he kind of been pining for this girl since the first book, I didn't think he was just going to be like, yeah, I felt like there was going to be some hesitation, and there is, as far as like the knowledge that he gives out. But as far as like his body's concerned, not so much. He's just like, take me.
If he was in another situation with her circumstances, he would have said no. I'm confident, but because he was undercover and he was, there was that mission on the line. I feel like that combined with his emotions for her, he kind of had no choice but to give in. That's my take on it.
Which in hindsight we learn is null and void, like all his, trying to keep information secret and his mission. I mean, she's been following his ass like since the first book and knows like their every step, knows where she actually knows where his group is, and he doesn't even know technically where they are, kind of thing. So this whole like, it's funny because the first time you read the scene, you really think Tanis is doing this great job of like not revealing information, kind of skating around said things that are brought up, but she's bringing them up for, very point, like the whole jab about like, oh, I didn't know you were in the army, tomorrow, what, we're just going to give you a command. And, that's a whole slide into the whole, like, I know you're doing this mission,
I didn't even think of it that way. You're right, that she's just toying with them. Like she knows, and she's not even she's offering it, but not seriously.
It actually starts when you walk in the room and she says the whole, like, she receives a message from the housemaid, and it's what she says to the housemaid. Like, and she specifically kind of states that, like, I'm doing the mission right now, leave me alone, kind of thing. Like, and then she gets exactly what she was looking for because she mentions it to Tanis openly, and this is the second time the enemies have done this. But she mentions that she's looking for Beckermin, and when she mentions the green gemstone man, Tanis is like, and he has that moment where he remembers, oh, Barham's on the ship, and she's all like, oh, you know where he is, great.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't even need to ask. He just no. I'm telling you, this part of the book is absolutely. It's almost like 3 books put into one. But this part right here, that's like this is a simple like sex scene, but there's so much into this scene. You know, the whole like cat and mouse type of game they got going. This whole like. Yeah, there's also other information that we get, like we get some kind of uniform formation structure from the High Lords, because we find out they live together. They have like a roommate kind of, that they pair Dragon Lords together.
And that was her third lover in 3 days, and that was noted. So she's definitely not, she's happy to see him, but ultimately she's not trying to be in love with him.
She's a hoe.
Hey, Travis. And she kind of gets what she wants, because she makes the comment about like, oh, if you would have turned me down, all this like, I would have just had you killed by now, and she is a Dragon Lord, it kind of fits the, so she's just walking around being like, hey, you in the room right now, you don't want it, kill that dude,
Yeah.
I think everybody's had that one girl in their life that they were just infatuated with to a bad degree.
Yeah.
I can agree. We all make mistakes when it comes to love. No one's perfect. Even the hero of the story, which I kind of prefer. This could be a simple fairy tale, like love story, kind of like what we've got from Huma and the Silver Dragon. That's nice and everything, but that's not exactly real life. This is a lot more real life. The complication of alignment. Yes, you love this woman, but due to her actions, you're having the struggle of, I can feel that kind of thing. So anything else before we move on to the boot scene?
No.
All right. Chapter 10, The High Claris Tower, The Knighting. Jump to Palanthus. It's under siege by the dragon army. Knights are worn thin, but guarding the tower of the High Claris, built long ago by the founder of the Knights, Venus Solemnus. The tower is what is protecting Palanthus, capital city of, I always mispronounce this, Solomnia.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to say it because I always want to say salami for some reason. Sorry.
No, you're good.
The Dragon High Lord, known as the Dark Lady, is away, currently on a secret mission, and we learn she is held in top command under the Dark Queen herself. We get a flashback moment between the Dark Lady and the young commander Baccharis, or Baccharis, maybe Baccharis, discussing their battle plan for the tower. The Dark Lady with her mission to find the Gemstone Man, Baccharis to starve the Knights and the tower. We jump back to Stern's party of Knights and Derek's as they make it to Palanthus. Fighting between the two factions, with Derek showcasing his ambitious nature, Stern winning favor from the city and receiving rations. Thankfully to the measure, no real physical fights between the Knights, with Derek and he's steadily declining into madness as this is going on. Lord Alfred finally realizes his mistake in backing Derek. News of Stern's vindication comes to the battlefield and boosts morale, but also makes Derek go insane. Stern's coronation takes place in the courtyard of the tower. Derek and his followers are not in attendance. Stern spends the previous night in the chapel preparing during the ceremony. He comes out of the chapel wearing white robes and is joined by Lorana, Flint, Tass, and Lord Alfred, and they knight Stern. During the siege, after Lorana has arrived, Lord Gunther sends word for Lorana to return to St. Chris, but after seeing how dire the knight's situation is, she decides to stay and train the knights with the lances. Some backstory: Lorana, Tass, Flint, and some knights hauling supplies leave Palanthus and head to the tower, but due to the icy conditions, they barely make it. This So we go back to present day. This is the tower that they know the road to Palantis is not passable at this moment and will receive no more supplies. The Rana tries teaching the knights about the lances, but at the moment no use due to them simply being starved to death with only days remaining food-wise. At the end of the chapter, the lance lay in the courtyard, buried under the snow and forgotten. So that there's a lot that this is again sped up kind of clip notes. So that there is a massive snowstorm that is happening during this, and this is the reason that Palantis is being cut off from the uh, Solamnia. But the crew making it there was pretty much the last of the crew that makes it there. And not all, they set out with like a bunch of knights, and along the way they lost those knights. They had a bunch of rations and lost those. So we're kind of getting into more a perilous situation because these knights are stuck around this tower. They're trying to defend it off against thousands of draconians, and on top of that, with dragons. And they're basically running out of food. And Laron and them show up, and they're like, "Hey, we got the answer to your prayers. We brought these dragon lances." And they're like, "We need food." Any the only thing I'd like to throw into this chapter, which I do like this chapter, but my favorite part of this chapter was the whole knighthood and how it's all done, and it goes down like Sturm going and like spending all night in prayer and then coming out, and the way he comes out in his robes and everything, and his friends adorning parts of his armor and basically putting on his armor for him. I thought was fantastic. I mean, you talk about a knight ceremony, it's so much better than just like bloop bloop bloop. Oh, now you're a knight. Like, no, this was dope. Like, come out in the ceremonial robes and then get knighted by your trusted friends in front of the order that you're established in. Fantastic. You talk about a moment that I would love to see live action, and something that could be like epic and majestic is just this. I mean, I'm thinking about the Star Wars, ceremonial scene at the end of New Hope, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, this chapter is pretty much setting up just the siege that is going down and the dire situation that they're in. It's kind of like lapping it in. Another thing that I haven't really implied, and it goes further as we get closer to it, is the mention of these towers. I haven't really thrown that in because it's kind of background information and it doesn't really move the plot forward, but there has been a lot of talk of these two towers and the importance of the Draconian army on why they want to destroy these towers. And it's basically during the last, the catalyst, these were the two like big catalysm.
Cataclysm.
Okay, these were the two last towers that basically were the main defenses, before. So this is the reason they're trying to destroy these towers is because but we also find out there's heavy other reasons that the Draconian army wants to destroy these towers, and it's because what's in the tower that our good crews don't know about. Is there anything anybody wants to throw in this chapter?
Yeah,
I just love.
but after
Okay.
or Tony, go for it.
I was going to comment on the realization of Sturm's dreams. I loved it. He was walking around in his father's armor. I mean, he wasn't actually a full-fledged knight of Solamnia, even though he did follow the codes and the creeds. And to finally see his dream come true, when they stripped him of his armor, he thought he'd never get to wear it again. And now, not only does he get to wear it, but he was adorned by his fellow knights. So that's kind of like, he had his disgrace, but now he's having his ultimate dream come true. And I've always loved that about this character.
Yeah.
And Derek couldn't be more of a jackass.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're talking about as this book goes. I knew we had the main villain with the Draconians, the Dark Lady. And did I not know that the main villain of the book was going to turn out to be Derek? I mean, he's pretty much a main hindrance of, especially
Didn't
when we
they mention
started.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Didn't they mention
at the end of the last book that there's only two towers still standing?
Yes. And it's this one in Palantis, and if I'm not mistaken, the other one was closer to where the first book started out. It's somewhere in that region. And they, as far as I know, it kind of like a Lord of the Ring thing, where they both they were both in contact with
There
each
was
other.
more, and they were destroyed after the
Mhm, mhm.
cataclysm. But those are the wizard towers, basically.
If I remember right, originally it was the same number of orbs, and I think there was 8. If I'm not mistaken, there was 8 towers that went with the 8
That
orbs,
sounds
and
about right.
something like it could be 6 or 7. Don't quote me. What's up, Aaron? Psychedelic.
So
Um,
note on the towers, though. This tower has none of the beauty or enchantment of the towers of high sorcery or the elven towers. It's a massive fortress of strange design set in a valley where no one can get through toward Palanthas. Even at this time, when there are so few knights of Solamnia, the tower is held by the knights. And it does mention the clerics of Paladine had lived in the High Clerist's Tower during the Age of Dreams. The Age of Dreams was during the period of the Ancient Dragon Wars. So, which is, I think that dates before the Cataclysm. And then
Oh yeah.
and it does, there's a part where the Dark Lady is speaking with her lieutenant. Originally from Estwild, Baracus is the Blue Dragon lieutenant, second in command to Kitiara, and undoubtedly a participant in a boot scene.
Ooh, I like that extra added information, and that
She's
kind of
getting-
lines up with some other stuff because the way he's treated and stuff, it's more like a scorned lover kind of thing. She's all like, just go do that. You'll be good. I'm going to do this. Because it's not necessarily here. Well, it is in this scene, but it's more so in the next scene when we get. After she kind of takes off from him and she's like, yeah, I'm going to go do this. And you just stay here and keep up with the siege kind of thing. So I can totally see that there was a boot scene with those two. And I do like the layout. I can say reading this, the layout of the tower was a little confusing on why it was. So it does make sense that they're in this like valley and yeah, because it is stated that this is kind of like you can't make it into the city until you pass Palanthas. But the way it's kind of set up, it sounded like it was just out in the open and there was a hill on the other side. So hearing that it's a valley, that makes a lot more sense that they have to go through this valley, through Palanthas, to get to Palanthas kind of thing.
A short
Well,
note.
like 300, they can secure the
whole city.
point,
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense then how just a few amount of soldiers can defend, against an army, and it didn't specify how many soldiers were in that army of the dragon army, did it? I think
No, I want to say, I might have stated it wrong. I want to say it's more in the tens of thousands. It's a massive army that's in front of them, and they do stay a certain number of dragons. I want to say it was like 3 at this time or something. They're she has a set number of dragons, and then I want to say this is one of the bigger battalions that we've seen in the book is at the siege, because normally it's been like a couple thousand that they've seen, as far as like the draconian armies within eye view. In the distance, there's a different story that I think they've seen legions kind of thing. But at this point, I think as far as the story, this is the biggest amount. This reminds me of like Helm's Deep kind of thing. If I had to, put a war scene to a scenario, this is kind of what this feels like. It's just this massive army sitting outside of where this tower is. There's like this small barricade that's in front of this tower, and that and basically in front of them is just an open plains field that's just about to be the battlefield kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's only 100 soldiers. It said it did say that. So and they lost about half of them on the first night.
Yes, and it's stated also that they're not only losing soldiers, but they're actually losing citizens of Palanthas because they were part of the crew that went up with Lorana and them to try and get rations to the crew because of the massive snowstorm and stuff like that.
Which were known as and it says here the footmen. So the footmen are conscripted, are a conscripted army under the direction of the knights, but no part of the knighthood itself. Yeah, no. So yeah, that was probably like the city folk going to help the knights.
They set up specifically that it is a nasty, dire situation, and not just because of natural disturbance that's going on, but the advancing army that's approaching and the few knights that are there. Because on top of that, they were split into 3 factions. At this siege, there's only 2 of those factions: it's Derek and in Sturm's faction. The third is off on that other mission, which doesn't play out in this book. I'm assuming it's something they're setting up for the next. Because here is just the crown and the, or what is it the crown and the rose?
It is the, I was just on it. The battered scabbard, the rose and the crown and the kingfisher. So now I have a note about that. This is during the ceremony when Lord Alfred stood in the center of a circle of the knights dressed in his battle armor. He had a red cape that fluttered from his shoulders. The kingfisher, a specific note on it is Caramon in his bestiary later wrote, "I still have no clue what the Knights of Solamnia find so appealing about this bird. It isn't a great warrior. It doesn't do anything special or have any prophetic markings. Why do they make such a fuss over it?" To this, Bertram, the aesthetic, adds, "Whatever else can be said about a kingfisher, it is a protective parent. It guards its nest zealously, refusing to leave even in the face of death itself. Several books on natural science report that kingfishers do anything to feed their young, including tearing off strips of their own flesh. I believe that this boundless sense of responsibility and honor that parallels the Solamnic measure gives the kingfisher a place of honor within the knighthood."
I like that. And I do know that kingfisher is on like best mother, but I think they're like number 5, like animals as far as most protective and stuff like that. So when I read the kingfisher thing, I thought it was just a family crest that he implied and something before the knights kind of thing. And I will like to add that Tony, talking about Sturm's mission, I was a little disappointed that he didn't get the father. I kind of felt like we were going to get some of that in there, because that was part of his mission, was to find his father and what happened to him, because he just kind of disappeared. So I was hoping at some point he was just going to pop up, like he was going to be at Palantis, and Sturm was like, "Hey, I've been looking for you, Dad. Where you been?"
Or just a drunk ass over and floats them. Just
Yeah.
brought out.
Kiara and Taz go into the room, and Sturm's dad is the roommate. "Hey, get the F out of here." "Hey, don't I know you? Don't I know you? Aren't you Sturm's dad?"
I always just presumed he was dead.
I kind of do too, but I felt like the way the book set it up in the first one, like there was a possibility that he was still out there, kind of thing. No, but I love that Sturm gets knighted, and I mean, on all accounts, I mean, since we started with him, he's felt like a knight, but it is, I mean, he's basically been, the Walmart version of a knight kind of thing, just running around in the clothes,
For somebody that didn't have the official title, he did his best. He lived by the code.
There's a little honor to be found in the murky gutter water, and that is true.
Yeah. Speaking of the dragonlances, well, I mean, we weren't, but we are now. When Derek he had his men by their orders stack the dragonlances in the courtyard. The lances seemed clumsy, unwieldy weapons. Well, the dragonlances were much longer than a normal footman's lance and heavier. They were designed almost exclusively to be used mounted on the saddles designed for the backs of good dragons and were used primarily as an air-to-air weapon, for the record.
I like that, because I will say there is a hesitant as far as the reader to the book, as far as like they describe these lances as needing to be learned how to use, and I find, as I was reading, I was like, they're knights, how do they not know how to use a lance, kind of thing. And so I kind of assumed that they had to have, like, either they were like extremely long, or some to some effect like that, because it's not just once that they mention it. I want to say it's like 5 or 6 times that the book refers to, you need to be taught to be able to use these. You have to be a certain height off the ground, because they refer Flynn is too short, to be able to wield them. So I kind of just, even though the book doesn't outright like give us the specifications of the lances themselves, I kind of figured something like that. And I will say there are some pictures in the book that, like, they show the catapult that Fizban was working on, but they don't, like, and it's right here, but they don't show the lances or whatever. So as we were reading it, that was a kind of thing that came to mind. I was like, well, what, you know, I mean, it's a lance, you know, I mean, it's just, it's a long pole. How do you not know how to use it, you know? But that makes sense. That makes sense.
If you can see this, here's on the cover of my trilogy, this has Caramon holding a dragonlance. That thing's pretty long.
I guess it's kind of like if you know how to use a sword, but learning how to use a great sword would take a different type of technique.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you'd have to train with it and stuff like that. And it would apply to any sword, you know, so I'd assume, you know, and it's really the way. It's not so much the knights don't want to use them and don't know how to use. It's more like they're already in a, you know, very stressful situation. They're already at war. And they need supplies, and that they're brought the dragonlances, and they're like, we don't need more weapons, you know. I want to believe it's more a fact the knights don't see the significance of them, kind of thing, or they don't know the power that's inside, especially because, like, I mean, not everybody was in that meeting where Theros threw the lance at the stone. That was only like the heads of the heads, you know. And as far as the knights goes, it was really only Gunther and, you know, a couple of the high, you know, it was like, I want to say it was, I don't remember if Alfred was there at that time. I don't know, but no, I want to say it's like a bunch of those factors on why they're just not like, hey, Lance, let's go. You know, then it's the ultimate weapon that we've been waiting. You know, yeah, I mean, it all makes sense, you know. Yeah, but I will say that I did have that question in mind, and it was more, I just needed an explanation of the specifics of how the land, you know, because I could imagine if they have like some weird, like, you know, handle or something, and, you know, they mentioned lance and like, oh, I know how to use lance, and then they see that where you're supposed to handle it, and it's some kind of weird design or something, you know, to protect you. So I could get all that.
Well, now you know.
Right.
Sorry, I had a bad joke go through my head.
Tell it.
Not everybody knows how to work their poles.
No, that is true. That is true. And we do know people practice on poles, you know. I mean, just saying, you know. All right, so let's move along.
Yeah,
Chapter
let's move
11. A Kinder's Curiosity. The Knights Ride Forth. Flint and Sturm walk the ramparts of the tower, and Flint tells Sturm of the tomb of Huma and the forging of the lances. Flint tells Sturm they would go back after him, but Sturm is lost in despair to hear this. Talks of sending Lorana, tasks Flint away if warm weather arises. Flint mentions Palanthas being the better option to starve off an attack. And this comes from him looking at the building, and this is kind of customary every time Flint comes to a building. He's very adamant on the construction. It just applies to what dwarves are known to do, kind of thing. But at this point in the chapter, we start learning more of the construction of the tower, and it doesn't make sense to anybody that sees it as far as like a defensive type of mechanism, because they're told that this tower has held off attacks before, but they get there and they're like, it's got huge, massive openings. There's no way to like, it's got like 3 massive like front doors that don't really have, you know, front doors per se. Yeah, but it's something that Flint is kind of mentioning in the background, kind of thing, and it comes into play later on.
Well,
I do like this.
I gotta chime in because there it's perfect, because he does kind of scorn it. He says, "Pull the knights back to Palanthas. We could hold that town against even dragons. All wagers. Its buildings are good, solid stone, not like this place." And then the note is, apparently the humans did a good enough job. The Tower of High Clearest has stood for thousands of years. So come on, Flint, get your shit together. Yeah,
right.
There for a reason, buddy.
What it really is construction envy, and that's the way every construction worker, when they see a better building than they could have came up with, they're like, "Yeah, this thing is crap." Like, you know,
you're talking firsthand experience.
Yeah. Shh. Okay. So Sturm believing they only have to reestablish supply lines. Derek comes forth and tells Sturm, after a very heated tiff, that he plans to wait no longer, taking his knights and riding out headfirst into the dragon army. Sturm weighs against this idea. The knight Tass is very bored and explores the tower. There's a brief description from Flint about the construction of the tower, which I mentioned, having no defenses apparently. We learned the tower being sacred. No knights would or has entered its halls. Until Task gets bored, he enters secretly, making some noise, but the knights are distracted by their hunger. They don't hear him. Task makes it further into the tower, commenting something similar about the design of the tower being so easily accessible. Progressing further inside, Task finally comes to a locked door. Using a lockpick, he makes it inside and finds it's the heart of the tower and also has a fountain? Question mark. After investigating the fountain closer, it is revealed it is a. And we jump to Derek and his knights mounting, ready to head out. Sturm asks Lord Alfred to stop Derek, but he can't due to the measure. Derek commands Sturm and his men to ride, but Sturm refuses and thus breaking the code. He gives his men the option of going or staying. Staying would be breaking the code along with him. Most stay with Sturm. Derek publicly condemns Sturm damning the measure, and Derek rides off. Lord Alfred leaves with Derek. We jump views to the dragon army. Becaris has brought word from scouts that the knights have left the tower and are on the battlefield. He sends word to the Dark Lady and prepares for the battle. And that's where this chapter leaves off. Um, I absolutely love when we get tasks. I don't know what it is about them. It's like they saved the best for him. This whole exploration of this tower. I loved the cliffhanger. It was like because I was like, well, a fountain. What the f? Like what is this? And as he's exploring, he's like, oh, it's not a. And then it just jumps over to Derek. I can say at this point I didn't know how the Derek thing was gonna pan out, so this worked out wonderfully. Like this whole like I'm gonna go I'm the knightiest knight there is, and and I just imagine as he's like going out there, and this is going back to the buddy Mike and the pizza party thing. I feel like Derek was out there on his horses and he was like, "Have you heard about our Lord and Savior?" In the night, he's got the cantable trying to recruit some draconians.
He just
Uh,
went insane. He's like, I'm my duty in the knighthood's done. I'm gonna go out with the bang. Just
yeah, he's
went over
he's
the
literally that
edge.
guy. He's like, as he's going. And I like that Sturm also mentions, there's like thousands of draconians out there, and he's like, we got this, bro. Like, what he's like, what he mentioned, like something about like for one night it equals like I think 20 draconians or something, some good comparison. He's still like, there's a
No, it's like it
thousand.
wasn't draconians. It was like it was goblins or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
And they were
Hobgoblins.
like,
You're
and he
right.
was like, these are draconians,
He has
dude. Like,
draconians. He's like, we've barely been able to,
get your shit together.
starve off like 10 or 12 of these guys, let alone like thousands of them. And then on top of that, he's trying to like, that they're not just a regular draconian class army. They actually have the layered version draconians here that have the poison, the self detonating. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just your typical like. I I think it's fantastic because this could have been another boot situation where we just panned over what happens to Derek and I actually love that we get the full out like because it's broken into segments, but I actually like that we find out what happened to Derek and his crew as they left the tower and stuff. Um,
I
no,
get
I
Mon-
thought
I get Monty Python Black Knight vibes from Derek.
I do.
It's a flesh
It-
wound.
Right.
Well, I have a couple construction things to tell you about this tower as well as the Kender. I'll just start with the Kender. It's handy to have a Kender around when danger might lurk because Kender they'll notice anything, no matter how minuscule, in a scene that might indicate trouble ahead. Of course, they might go explore it first, forgetting to warn you about it. So off task goes.
Yeah.
So and then. He did say to himself, I believe, he said, anything easy is more trouble than it's worth. It was an old Kender saying. There's another one that there's always curiosity killed the Kender.
Yeah.
And then, but you'll find this interesting as far as the architecture and the structure. The gates of Paladin is the cliff-edged entrance to the long fjord called the Bay of Branchala, leading to Palantis. Branchala is a god of good. And then the three gates, they were called Great Gates, the steel gates on this tower. Considering that the coinage of Krynn is based on steel, these doors would be incredibly valuable. So it's something is worth noting that
Makes sense. Yeah, especially
no one's even come to like just rob it,
dismantle it. Yeah.
No thieves there. I wonder if it's been has the tower actually been like abandoned for any amount of time? Did that get mentioned, or was it?
I want to say yes, because it's considered to be sacred, and it's mentioned that the knights frequent the tower, but they go past it to get to Palantis, and it's just like, and I think that the city of Palantis, the way it treats it, is also like kind of like a holy relic site, but due to them not having any clerics, nobody can go inside, kind of thing.
Got it. The original design for the High Clerist's Tower was a gargantuan structure of immense complexity and detail. Every consideration was given to its defense, particularly against dragons. Indeed, the interior structure was designed specifically to combat dragons. As my wife and I envisioned it in the game design, the tower itself was haunted by spectral revelers whose souls were trapped in an eternal celebration of death. The knights never seemed to penetrate too far into the interior of the tower. In the book, it's probably just as well for them that they did not.
Ooh,
nice. I like that. I can say, and I don't know about y'all because this goes back to when you first read it, but I was very hesitant with this chapter, especially when Task came up to the locked door, because so much of the nightmare scenario is playing out. I was very hesitant that we were about to see the death of Task with this locked door, him going in this tower, especially because he was all by himself. No one was there. No one even knew he went in there. And then on top of that, he didn't know what was in the tower. They're expecting it to be some like holy good thing. But on the other side, the Draconians are trying to get to this tower for some unknown reason. So I was kind of like almost in the thinking that we might get this lockpick scenario thing with Tass and stuff. So I could say I was glad that it didn't turn out that way, but it kind of felt that's what, especially because how easily access to tower was. I was like, while reading this, I was like, Tass, I mean, I get that you're curious, but you're just being led into this, if it was a trap kind of thing.
Now that you bring that up, which is great, I think they could have been a mark missed that instead of him dying, but at least present that as an issue. Like as he's getting ready to pick it or in the middle of picking it, he's like, has that light bulb moment. Oh shit, wait a minute. Hold on, let me look closer. Oh yeah, there's that poison needle sticking out. How about I go ahead and flip that and use a different pick to trigger that, and now I'm safe. Just something, or go a little more extreme and have him get poisoned, but somehow someone comes and they have a cure for him to save him, or go the whole extreme and just kill off the little bugger. But
that's a great point. The army is not trying to get to the tower; they're trying to get to Palantis.
Yeah. Well,
it'll open up the sea to them conquering across the sea.
Yeah. But they do mention the tower specifically in the great. But we do know it's because the wizards used it to, and when going forward, we know what they really used it for. No, but I will say that this chapter, because I didn't see the setup of the other death that we do get, I mean, and it's there, but a lot of this is, I kept expecting the whole Tika moment to eventually happen, her getting overwhelmed by something, which that doesn't come to play, but and it's not to say that it won't, but no, but a lot of this stuff is lining up. So, I mean, reading it, I was getting very hesitant about the situation, especially when the way it cuts off kind of thing. It was I was like, yeah, kind of moments, but it's quickly shown that it's not, because we move on to chapter 12, Death on the Plains, Tasselhoff's discovery. A thick and heavy mist hits the battlefield, and only sounds of metal clanging and death are heard. Lorana waits in a room and sees a messenger arrive from Palantis talking to Sturm. Tass is lost in thought. Messenger tells the path to Palantis has been cleared. Sturm asks Lorana to take Flint and Tass to flee to Palantis. Lorana pleading the case that they will be needed. Lorana and Flint being the two trained with the lances. Tanis wants and thoughts are brought up but ultimately Lorana chooses to do what Tanis would do, but more importantly, what is right. Tass starts moaning, and attention moves to him, and he reveals he found another dragon orb within the tower. Near midnight, Baccharis comes to the gates of the tower, claims to have both the leaders, one beheaded and one kind of alive, not confirmed who is who, Derek or Alfred. Um, commands they surrender by morning. Baccharis is believed safe due to the code and is greeted by Lorana, who shoots him in the arm, maiming that arm, with Sturm announcing that they would be no surrender. Baccharis retreats. They retrieve the bodies of the officer, Lord Alfred beheaded and Derek barely alive. Derek mutters some craziness and dies. Sturm saying he died with Otter. Now we jump to Tass, Flint, and Lorana, and Tass tells them he was told to destroy all the orbs by Fizban's commands. Lorana believing that the orbs have to be used to some degree due to most wizards being perfectionists, but can't even activate. But Tass puts together previous clues, Nosh telling Tass of the words appearing in the orb, but couldn't read them due to language of magic, Tass having the glasses of true seeing, Lorana believing dragons are coming, believing the army to be stalling. Tass reflects on Fizban's choices, the dark path, um, courage, and the loss of friends. He puts on the glasses, and that's where this chapter leaves off. I absolutely love this. The whole, us as the readers kind of finding out the true purpose of the dragon orbs, especially all these layered in clues, like the whole, like, that the orbs were, not exactly good or evil, but, kind of, more truer than true kind of thing. And we find out that they're really just beacons. They're beacons used to lure these dragons into these spots. And then, at one point we built these things to lure these dragons into these spots. Which, as I was reading this, I was kind of thinking, like, what did they do with the good dragons during this time? Like, did they, I mean, they were both fighting in this war. Like, they were like, all right, we got this plan. Y'all got to get the hell away from here while we do this, Does it even work like that? Is it a call that goes across the whole world,
Yeah, there had to be something that would, maybe a harness of truth or something that they wear that keeps them, that prevents them from going crazy or being lured by the dragon orb.
Yeah, they don't really distinguish between good or bad dragons. The dragon orbs control dragons.
It's just lucky that no good dragons were there, damn it.
Right.
Now, for all the history buffs of Dragonlance, you might like this one. The Goblin and Ogre War is perhaps the least chronicled of the conflicts in Krynn, primarily due to the fact that the human historians their primary interest in the war was not so much related to who won, but how effective both sides were in killing off the other. The outcome was something of a stalemate, but it did manage to keep peace in the human communities for quite some time. So
I actually got a little excited when I heard about, there's something about like the setup of different wars, and especially when you're getting further into the lore and any kind of like monster wars, I definitely want to hear more about. Like, I can imagine like the people that were on the sidelines watching these like ogres versus the hobgoblins or whatever, and they're like, yeah, who's gonna win this,
Mm-hmm. I got nothing for 12. I think it was a great setup for what's to come, though.
Yeah, it's basically a lot of setup. I mean, we have the whole situation where like the book jumps forward and Tass is kind of already there, and he's kind of like moaning and pouting around. And it's because he has to deal with this choice that he knows he's okay. I will say it's like a surprise, and it's more to like Tass's morality, but the fact that he didn't find the orb and just destroy it right offhand, kind of thing. And it proves to be so important because you think about it, after Fizban's command and what he did with the first dragon orb, and after he tells him we need to destroy all these orbs, you'd think that him finding the orb, he just would have like grabbed it and just smashed it right there. So the fact that he keeps this information to himself for a little bit lets them deal with what they're dealing, especially because they get this great news that that they can get supplies and stuff like that. And then it comes from some really kind of crazy bad news, because that's when we get Derek. And I will say I love the whole setup with Derek, and Backer is bringing Derek and the body back, and him thinking, oh, they're not gonna be able to attack me because they got to follow this code. The Dragon High Lady told me about this code they got to follow. And then Lorana just shoots him, and he's like, well, what the.
No,
All right.
It was good. It was good. It's
Right.
interesting how they play how Lorana does step up to the plate though, and she really puts on her leader cap and makes shit happen.
I want to say ever since we did the Ice Castle thing, which we fast forwarded past that, but ever since then, when she was fighting the Ice Dragon, she was the predominant one that and Giltinus was there at that time, but he was more like backing up her initiative kind of thing. So it's kind of been more like Lorana stepping up into this leadership role minus Tanis kind of thing, which I've enjoyed. I kind of prefer Lorana's her decision making versus Tanis, because she's not. I mean, they're both love torn, but she's just not so much love torn kind of thing.
And Sturm, you were going to jump into this right now, I think, but Sturm came to accept his fate pretty quick there on the next chapter, just making that decision that, okay. And he didn't even want to use a dragonlance. He's like, nope, give me my sword. Give me my dad's sword. I'm going to get up there. And the only thing I could do is buy you time to do what you need to do. And I'm doing it out of honor. And that's all I have. Everything else is fallen away. The knighthood is in shambles. They're a bunch of turds. And, so just if I can do this one thing, then I'm going to die fulfilled.
I actually love all that, and maybe minus the lance. I was kind of hoping he'd take the lance. Okay, but let's get into chapter 13. The sun rises, darkness descends. The mist clears, and I want to go back to that, the whole mist thing. Was this, help from the gods kind of thing? This just so happens to come at a moment where, like, the dragon army was already moving towards the tower, and then this mist comes. Derek runs out to go fight this army, but, like, if the mist really wouldn't have come, like, the dragon army just would have pressed forward kind of thing. So I want to say that was kind of some intervention from some of our good gods, kind of thing. But the mist is clear, and it's a clear day. The dragon army moves forward. Sturm realizes Derek spoke truth, but was easily ambushed, because we get his version of the story, and then we learn how they basically ambushed him using the and it's I forget the military tactic they use. There's a name for it, but they actually use a pretty traditional tactic to kill the knights off. But it was kind of like a bait and switch. They kind of lured him in with like a couple army members, and then just had him come in further into the main army.
The front lines of the army, they fled in a false panic. And then that lured them into chasing them, so they chased them into essentially their doom.
Sturm reflects on his life, a home he never knew, a father he never knew or found, fighting for a country that exiled his people, thinks of the code, the measure failing. Sturm realizes the measure was a bad thing after all, but thinks how his friends helped open his eyes to true values. The army strikes the tower. A whole day of battle, but the tower still stands. But half the defenders now dead. The dragon army retreats and takes the night off. During the night, Sturm and Lorana cannot sleep. Sturm, with dark thoughts of defeat, is lightened by Lorana. Lorana mentions a scary dream with crystal hands and dragons flying down tunnels. Dawn approaches, and the dragon army seems to be retreating, but Sturm believes this is just a maneuver. While trying to figure out the army's doings, Tass sees 3 dragons en route. Sturm understands moving the army. Lorana tells Sturm that they have learned how to use the orb. Lorana realizes that the dream was a clue and knows how they must use the orb. They devise a plan, not told to the reader, with Lorana. Using the orb, Sturm says a brief goodbye to Flynn, tells Lorana she is to lead, and he will give them time to complete the plan. Sturm grabs a bow and a quiver of arrows, kisses Lorana goodbye, and she cries, pleads for there to be another way. Sturm reflects to the Forest Master's words and talks of not mourning those who have fulfilled their destinies. Sturm's fulfilled being a knight. They proceed with the plan. Lorana, Sturm, and are ready. Task takes off to activate the orb. Knights stand at the ready. Sturm climbs to the top of the tower, coming to a landing with no covering. He salutes Lorana using arrows, gains the specific attention of the three blue dragons. As in the dream, Sturm saw before three trumpets blare and knows he is due to die. The Dragon High Lord approaches, they salute one another, and the dragon goes in for an attack, but Sturm reflects with an arced swipe. The dragon flies around and under the tower, comes underneath with a fire blast, but Sturm slashes the dragon's nose, but the Dragon Lord takes her spear and stabs Sturm at that exact moment as he's striking the dragon. And that's where this chapter leaves off. I can't talk highly enough about this chapter. It's one of the bigger, thicker, meatier chapters, but I absolutely love this. This whole, just the farewell between the characters, like the realization, like that we go back to the Forest Master and that whole fulfillment of destiny thing, and Sturm technically, very much right so fulfilling his destiny. Because he could have done it in some other ways, and that kind of came up in the trial, and that kind of, we could have seen a Derek version of a knight, and the way he could have used other things and just given his knighthood, and Sturm still stuck to his values and that kind of stuff. I also love the realization between the code and the measure that he still believed in the code, even though the code failed him, but the measure was just broken beyond belief for this scenario kind of thing.
I love how their writing is just so good. It gives you just feel that scene.
Yeah.
The whole presentation with Sturm on the top of the tower, it flows. It's very visual. It's easy to process. I can remember reading Harry Potter, and no slight to Harry Potter, but they're especially with when the dragon scenes are involved, like the way it's written, it's more like vague type. No, this is beat for beat. The dragon came in this way, went around, did a fire blast, and no, it's very nice and it flows very well. It's easily visually descriptive kind of thing. It's an excellent scene. But not only that, but the lead up to everything, like Tass seeing the dragons again with his eagle eye vision, them figuring out that the army wasn't doing this and that, and kind of Sturm being that, because it's not just something that you would notice, these things. Oh, the army's moving out, well, there has to be a reason, kind of thing. This all comes with battle, experience and that kind of stuff.
And if you think about it, Sturm's got a lot. He's battle tested compared to 90% of the knights, probably.
The authors used they kind of pulled from a Norse legend, like a Valhalla type of scenario, where the sacrificing his own life, for the apex of his destiny. They didn't. It was kind of fun. It's interesting to know that they were pretty invested in this character, and both Margaret and Tracy cried while they wrote it.
I could see
they did a really good job of it.
I was extremely surprised because I knew there was going to be a death. Especially when you deal with the trilogy, it's kind of like the cliffhanger, that something to that form or fashion, especially since we got trilogies like Star Wars and stuff. Okay, but I did not think especially because Tony's love of this character, I felt like we were going to be with Sturm for a lot longer because of his love of this character. And he's just that impactful of a character, and I get it. So, me as the reader, this whole scene totally caught me off guard. I did not think, especially because we're not even at the end of the book kind of thing. We still got a couple meatier chapters left. So the placement on where Sturm dies also caught me off guard. I figured the death was going to be like the very end of the book kind of thing, and that's where we were going to leave off with. Also, the whole gold moon healing thing, I kept expecting, some form of that to come in, especially because we're in the high tower of like clerisy, so I was like, I felt like that was going to play. No, that, this is a permanent thing.
Well, speaking of Tony being a big fan of Sturm, I think this next cliff note might have been in reference to you. You can confirm or deny. We had no idea that Sturm's death would cause such an uproar among the fans. We received tons of letters from fans who were shocked that we would actually kill off a hero, despite the fact that we had foreshadowed his death through 2 books. A fan once accosted me at Gen Con, accusing me of not caring about Sturm. He's just a character to you, the fan told me. In fact, Sturm was not just a character. Characters became a part of you. You get to know them better than family and friends sometimes. It was terribly hard for me to write this death scene. I was crying so by the end that I had trouble seeing the computer screen. I cried again when I had to write the funeral. And that was from Margaret. So was that you, Tony? That's what I want to know. Was that you and Jen?
In a way, yes and no. I mean, looking back, I saw some of the foreshadowing. With my favorite characters being knights, that they live by a code, and by the same stretch of the imagination, they die by a code. So I knew for him to get the honor that he so desperately craved, that I knew somewhere in these series of books he was going to die. I just didn't know when.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like to add some fantastic notes. One, that within our group, Stern is the most noblest, the most purest, and he's the first in the group to die off. I think that speaks statures, as far as where we're at in the book and where it's going. It paints like this huge dire picture, that he's the first to go kind of thing. It's also the level of surprise because he was the more established, like battle hardened character in the group. Not saying that the others aren't, but he was actually like an established knight, and then knights are worn, they're war characters. The other note is I did see a lot of the setup for this, but I would like to add that it's not just that he dies in battle. It's like way bigger than that because he dies in battle against a dragon high lord, like not just fighting a dragon, but then he's fighting a dragon high lord. So I can you talk about like the awards that he would have gotten. There would have been like 3 or 4 that like, oh well, you got one for fighting a dragon, you got one for
3 dragons.
Achievements unlocked. Achievement unlocked. Achievement unlocked.
Yeah, it's kind of like what is it, Pearl Harbor, when they say, what kind of mission this is? It says, yeah, this is a mission where you get a lot of awards, but they send them to your family.
Yeah,
that's true. Another thing to note is it doesn't sound off in the book, but and it's not stated either with the horns, but it's the moment when we found out the significance of the horns, and Stern realizes it as well. But each horn comes from a specific dragon. The last one is KTR's, and it's something that you have to kind of like figure out. But as the dragons are getting closer to Stern, they each sound off a horn, which reflects to the nightmare or whatever. In the nightmare, he took it as it was a good thing, like it was something that the known to the Knights of Solamnia or something like that. But we find out it's actually the enemy, like just alerting the other enemy, hey, we're almost there, kind of thing.
Great catch.
So we move on. Chapter 14, Dragon Orb, Dragonlance. Lorana gets the knights in place and hurries to join tasks with the orb. Looks up and sees Sturm stabbed with the spear. His sword falls to the courtyard below. The dragon High Lord retracts the spear and Sturm's body crumbles to the floor. The dragon shoots a bolt of lightning, shattering the top of the tower. The dragon High Lord ushers the army. Lorana takes her sword and shines it upward, grabbing the other 2 dragons' attention. One follows but pulls away as she enters the tower. She runs through the hallways, passing the portcullis, which are mentioned quite a bit, and explaining to the hidden knights to hide and wait. Makes it to the main chamber with Flint. Flint asks about Sturm and receives no answer, but can read Lorana's face. On a side note, this was the moment that got me. Was that moment? Was Flint asking about Sturm and Lorana not being able to answer, and Flint just knowing that Sturm had just that got me. Lorana asked Hast the instructions, and she hears, "Put your hands on the orbs," and she does so before hearing all of Tass's instructions. Battle ensues inside the orb for control. Eventually, Lorana standing and smiling, the orb changing to a bright white, and Lorana falls to the ground. Outside, the two dragons are destroying the courtyard. When the orb activates, all dragons hear the call of the orb and are forced to locate the source. Draconians, being half dragon, are also affected, but have different outcomes. Some go crazy, some try and get to the orb, it just has different outcomes. The dragon army's ground forces almost instantly flee. The first dragon makes it into the tower. Down the hallway, Flint closes its neck in the specially designed portcullis, trapping the dragon. Instantly, the dragon shoots out his lightning breath, trying to kill the orb. Before the dragon can breathe again, the mechanism slams down around the dragon's head. The knight uses the lances to stab and kill the dragon. As they do this, the second dragon starts to come in another hallway. As its head makes it into the chamber, the mechanism falls on the dragon's head, but this time only halfway, failing. With it half open, the dragon continues to breathe its lightning breath. Lorana and Tass flee the chamber as the tower falls on itself, destroying the orb. In a moment, Lorana mentions she wouldn't have been able to activate the orb a second time, having to use Sturm's death as strength. This is when Tass learns of Sturm's death. Another moment that moment really got me to cry. Lorana heads to the courtyard as the knights kill the second dragon, and she is confused due to no signs of the dragon army. She remembers the dream of Sturm's death and rushes towards him, grabbing a lance, but finds only Sturm's dead body. Now at peace, she wishes him a peaceful sleep, and then finds the gem covered in blood at his feet, and she picks up the gem. The dragon and its High Lord suddenly appears behind Lorana. She is overcome from the dragon fear, drops the lance and the jewel, turns to run, and slips and falls next to Sturm. Then tries to grab the lance, but the High Lord kicks it away. Lorana tells the High Lord not to touch Sturm, as he was a friend, and the High Lord tells Lorana that Sturm was a friend to her as well, revealing her to be Kitiara. Kitiara mentions seeing Tanis 2 days before in Flotsam, takes notice of the lance, tells Lorana she had won the battle, but takes the lance, tells her that they have 3 days to bury the dead, to give Sturm a night's burial, and after being asked, mentions Tanis would be told nothing. Kitiara hops on. Damn it, I didn't write it right, but whatever I forget her dragon's name.
Sky.
Sky, there, I did write it right, it just looked weird. Kitiara hops on Sky, flying away as knights come out to witness. She flies back and drops the lance, telling Lorana that they would need it. Kitiara and Sky fly away, and that's where this chapter leaves off. 100%. This was the chapter that got me to cry, and it was that moment with Tass finding out about Sturm. Like, Sturm dying did not get me to cry. Like, I love Sturm. He was a cool character, but the way he goes down, it's more like noble and honorable, and so it's not really that grieves a lot. But once we get to Flint and Tass, and then finding out they lost their friend, like, nah, that got me in the goods. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, stomach gut for real. Like, bam, like, you mother. Like, the Tass, like, oh God, that hurt me so bad. I was like, oh. And I will like to add out that this was so descriptive. It was so easy to like actually map out a picture, and I actually drew what the damn tower looks like and how it works with dragons flying in there and the mechanism. They were really descriptive on how this works out. So it really works out, because the leading up to this, it's still kind of like hesitant on how this is supposed to go down, and then Lorana runs in there and you're like, oh, that's what those big doors are. They're for the wings in the head. Like, oh, I got it. No, but this whole, it's fantastic. Them, actually getting some leverage on the dragons, like this whole scene with dragon, like the draconians going crazy and running off, like the dragons going crazy. The second mechanism failing. Man, there's so much
The
good in
first
this.
use of the dragonlance.
Yeah. And then the knight's just like, we don't know how to use it, but we can stab with it. Like
Tasselhoff gained a couple humanity points in that chapter, because when those knights were stabbing the dragon, I felt for the dragon. You can see the Tass felt for the dragon. Just he got duped, even though he's an evil dragon, just to go down like that, to get suckered into this hole, get pinned in, and then just get stabbed in the side. Like Tass went kind of ballistic. He just started. He was crying more about that than Sturm's death, but it all happened at the same time within just a couple pages. But he was like wild to killing. And normally he doesn't care so much about killing because it's in the heat of the battle and there's obvious good and bad. But in this situation, there was like a divide of like, was this really a good way to kill this bad guy? And to me, that just it created more humanity within the Kender than you'd seen.
It's also in that. It also goes into that, like the curiosity of like the world and everything, and these being like extremely rare creatures kind of thing, and Tass being the one like character that realizes that. I mean, he has like every time we run into like a fantastical magical creature like the griffins or
like walks up to it.
Yeah, and he's like, ooh, yeah. I mean, that's like the first time Tass sees a dragon, even though it's not a real dragon, it turns out to be the wicker dragon. He's just like, I wonder if I can go talk to it, Like, I mean, it just plays out that Tass would be the one that's hurt by this whole scenario of just killing the dragons, let alone the way they're killing the dragons, because the dragons are pretty much defenseless. Like, although we find out not so much, they still have some, but it's basically with the tower construction and it being old and this and that. I'm pretty sure that was more aligned, like stuff rust, and the mechanisms had to be, I mean, massive iron or steel or something, or either that they were making stuff out of gold because gold's not, as valuable as who knows. Anybody? Anything else on the
Tass the dragon lover? That's funny.
I like it. I like the whole reveal with Kitiara and Lorana, like Lorana, the whole conversation between the two, because honestly, I thought we were just going to continue like this massive fight, and one of them, maybe we were going to lose Lorana or mortally wounded or something like that, and it's just like a brief conversation between the two. And, it's nice that it's an extremely respectful conversation between two warriors kind of thing, like, yeah, I and I like that KTR is not that bad guy that's like, I just killed your best warrior, bitch, but it wasn't anything.
She's just a
like
straight
that.
up mercenary. She's like, I came here, did my job. I don't need to kill you.
Did she do her job?
No, she didn't. She was supposed to destroy the tower.
For the time being. They'll be back in 3 days.
I do think like that was a mark on her towards the Dark Queen, because she should have kind of followed it through, and she just put the brakes on it. Yeah, she lost a couple dragons, but she had the upper hand at the end, and she chose to give it up.
I want to say we do, in that little bit of conversation that we do see where her like interest is and what this whole scenario represents, because it's kind of like a jealous twist between lovers.
She didn't care about the Dark Queen.
Yeah,
she's just using the Dark Queen for her own.
Yeah, and she kind of throws. She's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to tell Tanis about that. And when Tanis isn't even brought up, kind of thing, and like it goes into the whole like, I know that you're romantically involved with Tanis, but I got Tanis right now. He's taking on my boots,
Yeah, I was going to point that out, that it seemed like Kitiara was kind of looking down at Lorana going, yeah, I'm banging you, buddy, and I could kill you right now, but I ain't going to.
Yeah.
I feel that the whole line about like, oh, you won this battle. I feel like that's what that line specifically refers to. She's not even talking about the damn siege at all. She's talking about like the damn romantic tiff between Tanis, Lorana, and KTR. Like, yeah, you may have won today, but guess what? I'm banging you, dude. You know.
What would Tanis do though if she told her, "Oh, I killed Lorana"?
Oh,
Tanis would go. I don't know. He'd probably go nuts.
Even about Sturm, yeah. So I think that was my initial reaction is why would
That
she?
related to Sturm.
Yeah, why would she tell Tanis about what happened? Just it's not going to benefit her to have him all upset about one of his best friends dying, especially by her.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about it, I don't think KTR is going to say anything about this whole situation because you can't tell him like, oh, I just saw a bunch of your friends. Like, well, what happened? Well, we did our Dragonlord thing and we killed. No, but I think that's the real reason. The whole like, I'm not going to tell Tanis anything, and it's more like a line like, well, I can't tell him because if I do, I'm bad guy.
So we'll have to stay tuned and see what Kittyara does tell Tanis in the next book, if anything.
All right. So we get to chapter, and it's simply called The Funeral, no number. That night, it is extremely cold, no watch is set, and they bury the dead in the chamber of Paladine under the tower. Not a real ceremony or a funeral. The dead are laid on a long table, the bodies covered in ceremonial sheets, with the sword and effect from the enemy. Alfred, Sturm, Derek are brought in last, laid in that order. Sturm, his father's blade, a black rose, and the star jewel covered in blood, and the lance. Lorana learning this was why the dreams were linked due to Alhana and Sturm's love. Lorana, mad, another friend is gone, scolds the knights and tells them Sturm lived and breathed the code. She tells them that tomorrow she heads to Palantis with a lance and the dragon's head to show them the danger, and vows to take it to other places holding such petty grudges. She pleads to Paladin. Behind, she pleads to Paladin. Behind her, the knights in unison pray out loud to Paladin. We hear that the prayer, all the knights kneel before the altar of Paladin, and they leave. The group say their personal goodbyes to Sturm. Flint leaves a handmade rose on his chest. Tass leaves a feather, and Lorana says an elfin goodbye. They leave the chamber. We jump to Sylvanestein to say one final goodbye to Sturm. Since Tanis and the group left Ohana, her love for Sturm has grown and awaits a sign for Sturm's return, and finally gets an answer when the light in her star jewel fades. In a mad rage, she digs a hole into her father's grave and tosses the star jewel inside, damning hope of the world, but notices the jewel's light starts to light up. The tree above Lorex's grave starts to change back into regular trees, Ohana knowing she would have to bring back the elves to restore the forest, takes the jewel, puts it close to her chest, hops on a griffin, and heads to Aragoth, one tree now singing in a sea of darkness. And that's where this book leaves off. I will say it is a fantastic ending to a book, especially for like the middle of a series and stuff like that, especially touching base with Ohana and at the end of like Sturm's death. I will say that I have a little questions about the whole Star Jewel and the light at the end. What does that represent? But I think it's more like spoiler territory kind of stuff. But that was my only like traditional thought or question that came up was if the light is supposed to be connected to the light force, why did it light back up? Does that mean Sturm's not dead? Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on the funeral?
no.
Well, about the Star Jewel,
You muted, Trev.
in
Go
years
ahead.
to come, people looking for heroes and inspiration will visit the chamber of Paladin and pray before Sturm's body. It remains in a state of perfect preservation, perhaps because of the Star Jewel that lies on his breast. And the Star Jewel,
It's interesting.
has come to be regarded on Krynn as the star jewel. However, star jewels in general, while rare, have been known to the elves since ancient times. Among the Sylvanisty elves, gift of a star jewel is considered the greatest possible honor and a statement of eternal love. I like how they did a little nod to the next book. Her beauty blessed them like the beauty of a dawning spring day. That was like a hat tip to the next book.
Yeah, I did catch that.
Dragons of spring dawning.
Getting out of the winter, and what a hard winter it was, you know.
The second book is always the best in the trilogy, I think.
It's funny, Trev, because they talked about that's sometimes the hardest book to write for trilogies. Is that middle one, but this one stands on its own, and it's a strong book between the two, and it kind of it puts the bookmark. It puts the bookmark between the two of the hometown feel versus like the bigger picture war. Mm-hmm. And both authors said that this is their favorite of the three.
It's interesting, isn't it? I love it. I mean, especially for
you have to tie two books together. You have to bring in what's already happened and leave off on a cliff. You got to bring a lot together with the second.
And it's a lot of setup, and you're also trying to tie off threads that you started off. You're trying to keep the threads going through. It's a lot of. I can say as far as like writing. Usually, when you write, you establish a beginning and an end. Usually, as the middle is where you have to fill in. That's usually the harder stuff to think of. Simple Green. I like that. That's what they're drinking over there in the bar. Simple Green. That's what that guy Piggy was feeding the Draconia. He was like, "Yeah, I got the special drink over here. It's called Simple Green." It's just churned up dragons.
Bravo, guys. That's a good story.
Yeah, I loved it. I think we touched base with a lot of good stuff. I'm trying, because sometimes during my other book club, there's stuff that I'm like, man, I wish I thought of that and stuff like this. But usually after these episodes, like I feel like we have touched base with everything that's come up, kind of stuff. I don't know. I just love the story. I'm super excited to get to the next book, to move this along, but especially because I've been with this book for a while, but no.
Yeah, I forgot how long this actual book was. It's a lot of information.
It's thick. I mean, when I look down to the breakdown from this book to the first book that I did, this book is about double of the first book, and the first book was pretty heavy, information setup kind of stuff. But I mean, it's not against that. I love, you're setting up lore and background and all that's needed. It just adds more to the richness of the world that we're in, the emotions that we're, all that stuff. I love it, Anything else y'all want to throw down, before we end this session and finally move on to the next book?
Looking forward to the next book. My boy's going to be in it.
I don't know this guy.
Oh, you will.
He's not alive.
Yeah.
Not alive? We got zombies coming?
Yeah.
Is he the man with too many syllables in his name?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm mistaken.
No. It's a very basic name.
Awesome.
I will say this, though, about the funeral. When you talk about the laying of the black roses, I thought that was kind of like a foreshadowing of what was to come for the book 3.
So I could state that. I have, usually you ask a new reader for, predictions, for fun on the next book. I don't know if I have a lot of predictions and how this is going to play out, the imagination that's stretched in this book is I mean, I can see angles that this book would go, but right now we're talking about our group is so disjointed as far as we have some of them over here, we have some of them over here. It's really hard to see or where I think this is going, or even with this book, we were introduced to dragon orbs. It was an element that we didn't even have in the first book. I mean, the only things I can say that I'm hoping for is we get some good dragons in the fray, even though we finally met a good dragon in this book. I'm hoping that, We get some dragon riding, moments kind of thing. Yeah, and I think that is the one because I've heard him mention that name. Yeah, but I don't have a lot of like usually I'm more intuitive and I can kind of guess some things. That this book is so far in the realm of like, I don't know where it's going. So I mean, it could be a lot of different things. I have no idea.
I've read it twice and I still have no idea where it's going. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's like if I had to guess like characters, the only character if I had to like put a educated guess on who was gonna die within the next book, and my money is on Kitiara. Um, I want to say there's like a massive love triangle that's coming at a head, and one of them can't survive, kind of thing. And we have this character that has some already stains on her sleeves, and now she's got a nice black stain on her sleeve, kind of thing. You killed a friend of the group. That
What about
can't
Raceland?
go.
I just think for me, I think it's kind of remarkable that my favorite good guy, and favorite bad guy have something in common, and that's all I can say.
Thoughts on Raceland? If I'm the trajectory where we're going with Raceland, I want to say that we're gonna go like an evil path with Raceland, and not necessarily him, but I can see like a more like, the whole like tie with the dragon orm, him not wanting to give it up, him thinking it's leading him to these secrets and stuff. But I'm kind of hoping we're going to the library so he can uncover these secrets that are mentioned in this book, kind of thing. I'm
I'm sure
hoping.
but the next trilogy is the twins. So
Yeah. Well, I know he didn't die. I know
the
that.
twins have like a 6-book arc. It's actually
Mhm.
longer than that because Raceland has his own trilogy that's 4 issues. So
Mhm.
yeah, Raceland's story is quite in depth.
That's like Flint. I don't picture Flint dying, and the book's kind of hinted this at a couple times. I kind of just imagine him like exiting the series versus like dying. I feel, and it almost happened in the first book. It was like, in his nightmare, he just died of old age, kind of thing. So I mean, I kind of think that's part of the setup is eventually Flint's just not going to be in the series anymore. Like eventually there's going to be a reason why he's like, oh, that's enough. We got to cross the fucking sea up. And, Um, I imagine something like that. Like Tass, I have no idea. And I hope the nightmare scenario doesn't play out where we lose, and I do know that Tass is in some other books, but I don't know if they're prequels or sequels. Yeah, I don't know.
Drop your
But,
spoilers in the comments, everybody.
Spoilers.
right.
Right there.
There you go.
No, but no, Tass and Fizban being my like 2 favorite characters in the series, and I love a lot of these characters, but they're definitely 2 that has mine. Like especially when they're on the page, they have my direct attention kind of stuff. But for good reason, we got comedy and information. That's like every time Fizban's on a panel, we get massive amounts of information.
Do you know what the group is referred to later?
Mm-mm.
The Heroes of the Lance.
Well, I guess I kind of did know that from the song, right?
Yeah, I thought they've already said it a couple times. They've alluded to it.
I'll save
Yeah,
I was gonna post something in the comments. I'll save that for our backstage talk.
I'm really hoping in the next book we make some dragon friends, and like Tass becomes a full-fledged dragon rider, and I hope all these people become full-fledged dragon riders, and the rest of the books are just told through flying moments, like hey Tass,
Tass is like Pep and Mary all rolled into one.
Yeah, exactly. And
No,
Frodo, because he's carrying the One Ring, he's got a dragonlance. He's
Whenever we were talking about Tass and dragons, first thing that popped into my head was Donkey with his dragon wife.
I go hit Donkey more as Flint. That's Donkey is more like Flint's character for me because he's there, but he doesn't really like contribute or he takes hits on the head kind of thing. He takes hits on the head very well. And I like that the book focused on giving him,
I think
very,
Flint, his character is done really well because he didn't want to go there to begin with. He's kind of just along for the ride, so he didn't have any, main character moments.
Flint's a good option for character exposition because that's kind with that outside of comedy. That's where we get a lot of like background information on the group is through Flint. We get tales of like how Tass was and how Tanis was. That's besides the comedy outlook. That's how really Flint's used, just like character expositions and that aspect, which I love. There's not a single character in the main group. It's all the ones that they want to throw at us that kind of come up along the way, like Evan. I mean, Evan, and he's supposed to not be liked because he is a bad guy, but like, you get the sense of who's going to be there and who's going to. That's like, I want to say all the friendly, good characters that we've come across, like Boo Poo, or like I've enjoyed all of them because they all bring something new or something extra, and they're helping the group, that kind of stuff. All the ones that we don't get to spend a lot of time with that turn out to be bad guys and this and that, they're done in that fashion to be disliked by the reader, kind of thing. Like Eben, you kind of knew from the start something was off, kind of thing.
Yep.
I don't know.
Good show, guys. I do have to go, but thank you, Mike.
Yeah, that's it. We're at our 2-hour mark. Let's get the hell out of here. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Everybody that popped in and said hi. I want to thank my esteemed group of guests. My panel. And I'm looking forward to the next book, and hopefully, the whole group is there for at least the beginning of it. But if
The
not,
companions.
right, because we got a quest going on, and right now our group has been divided, and it's kind of mirrors this book, right? Our group now.
So true.
Yeah,
Wait
but
till-
we got
I was gonna say, wait
Go
till
ahead.
Just sacrificed himself on the tower.
I
Yeah.
might have to miss a few sessions in the future because of my move to Indiana, but I'm gonna try to hang on as much as I can.
Yep, and we are aware, and we hope the move goes well and everything. That's a huge thing, especially moving states, and
It had to happen right at the book I was waiting on.
maybe be more incentive to pop on by. No, I don't know. All right, guys, well, we're gonna end it. Thanks for everybody for showing up. Please comment below with any information that we missed out on, or you want to throw in there, or correct us on. I love all that. But guys, next episode in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you.
Later.